I have two interesting projects here. Over the years, we've always had customers who bring trees to the nursery for me to work on or to repot or to restyle. And these are typical examples. This is what we received over the weekend. This is a ficus and this is a hinoki cypress. Both are very interesting trees for this project because they are what we call problem trees. Very problematical trees. Let me deal with them one at a time. So let's put this one aside and look at this one. So this is a ficus, and as you can see, it's over 2 feet tall. The history of this tree is quite interesting. This customer brought this to me 8 years ago and I repotted it for him. He hasn't done anything since the last 8 years. He hasn't repotted it, so I haven't even looked at the roots. And he knows that it needs to be restyled because, let's face it, I hope he won't get insulted if he sees this video. It really doesn't look like a ficus or it looks like a bonsai. It is a piece of raw material. And when I travel abroad to especially India and places which have tropical climate, these types of trees, ficuses, you will find by the hundreds and thousands because this is the most commonly found tree that is around and very suitable for bonsai. You can see what I removed just now. That tiny bit of wire was his attempt at wiring. So you can see that it had quite a thick trunk here, but more than that, these long stems have grown in the last 8 years. But the tree is not just 8 years old, it is much older than that. He told me that he's kept this tree for the last 16 or 18 years. And when it was purchased about 18 years ago, it was about that big. And all these branches have certainly grown during that last 8 years. Certainly for the last 8 years, it's grown big and nothing has been done. Some attempt at wiring has been done here, and more than that, it doesn't look anything. But he has a sentimental attachment to this tree, and that's why he doesn't want it killed or he doesn't want to throw it away. So what can we do with this tree without really cutting it back to here and growing everything again? Let me bring my back. Usually with trees like this, with a trunk of that size, we would normally take the tree down to about there, cut these branches off and grow everything again. But because he's taken the trouble to grow the tree to such a tall size, I think it would be shame to spoil it. I don't think he would like that. So what I'm going to do is retain most of the branches. There are some dead branches which I think I need to remove. It's doing nothing. All these dead bits are doing nothing. And let me see what I can make out of it. Because it's a tall columnar tree, by the way, this is a ficus of some sort, but what variety I wouldn't be able to identify. It is very closely related to the Benjamina, but Benjamina usually has much longer leaves, longer pointed leaves as well. The bark is similar to Benjamina, but the species doesn't matter. The fact that it is growing quite strongly for the last 8 years is encouraging. Now, you can see what I've done just now. Just by opening it up a little bit like this, it makes it more interesting. So this is what I will propose to do. Open it up and then see what it will look like. So for that exercise, I think I will need some quite thick wire, and luckily there are 2 pairs of branches, so I will wire them. So I will get some wire and wire them. So I won't show you the actual process. We'll wait a bit, and when I've wired it, I'll show it to you again. So I'm in the process of wiring this tree. and because the trunk is quite thick, I would say it's certainly between 1/4 and 1/2 inch in diameter, I'm using this 4mm wire. Again, people do ask me, how do you know what thickness of wire to use? I tell them that you have to just use your judgment, because different species, remember, have different degrees of pliability. The age of the tree also has a bearing. The older the tree, the more atrophied the branches, so they become stiffer, so you may need a thicker piece of wire, so you just got to try it. And if one piece of wire doesn't work, you can always put a second piece to help it along. Put one piece of wire on. I'm not going to try and do anything too adventurous, because this is an old tree and I think he doesn't want me to cut too much off. So I'm constrained by quite a lot of factors. Very often people say, oh, why don't you cut this or cut that off? But they don't realize that I have to respect customers' feelings and customers' requirements, because very often, as I said to you earlier, they have a sentimental attachment to these trees. If they've taken all the trouble to grow it for 16 years from virtually nothing, and you can go and cut everything off, they won't be too pleased. And I've always got to remind myself that what you sometimes think is best is not what they think is best. So however sophisticated you can be, when you work with customers, you have to respect their feelings, respect their tastes. That is one piece of wire put on. I will try and show the before and after pictures for most of these projects, because I'm sure you would like to see the difference of the before and after to compare. Customers who bring trees to us, and especially on a very busy day, I can't do it for them straight away, so they leave it with us for a week or so, and he wants this repotted. I will look at the tree after I've restyled it to see how pot bound it is, even if it is to change the soil. If the soil needs changing, I will show you how I decide whether to change the soil or cut the roots, should it need it. I find these sort of projects even more challenging than starting from scratch, and being given a completely free hand because of the various constraints, don't cut this, don't cut that, makes it exceedingly difficult. If I was given a free hand, that would be fine. Yesterday I did a project which you will have seen because it may have been shown before. This gets shown where we did a very interesting pine and we completely transformed it because the customer was standing next to me and I could ask him, do you want this done? Would you like this done or that done? So he could tell me straight away whether that was acceptable or not. Here the customer's not with me, but he did give me instructions what he wanted done. So you can see I've opened it out to be a more vase shape, more open shape rather than congested in the middle. And I'm trying to create movement in the branches. If branches are straight, they don't look so interesting. They don't look so interesting. So I've just tried to open it out a little more. So it's got curves there, got curves there. And I will try and bend these a little more and see what happens. So I think that is as much as I would like to do to this tree. It looks quite different. Now let's look at the roots to see what it's like. Okay, this tree is not tied in. Keep filming and I will just bring something to prise it up. The soil is very loose. I think he may have just put it in a bigger pot. See, I think see what he's done. He's put it in a bigger pot. This root ball is not tight, not pot bound. He's just put more soil on the pot. So I will get one of our guys to tie the tree in. In fact, let me just do it myself. See, this is what he's done. Can you see? See, the original root ball is like that. So we've discovered that this tree has just recently been plunked in this pot. Nothing much else has been done to it. So we will just reposition it slightly and fill it with soil. So let me bring some soils, keep filming. Usually with ficus you don't need to use bonsai soil. In fact, most of the commercial trees that come from China, they just use an ordinary compost, which is just an organic compost. Of course, a more well-drained soil would be better. So what I'm trying to do is prop the tree up in a slightly different angle so that it's not leaning away. I also need to check with him where he's keeping the tree. I have a feeling that he's keeping it facing a window and never turning it, so it's become one-sided. It's facing the light all the time. So for those of you who are fairly new to bonsai, if you keep a bonsai in a room, make sure you turn it round from time to time so that it gets light from every side. So let's look at the tree from this side. See, this is how the tree keeps facing the window. And there you are. I think he can clean that, but if I clean it, he may not like it. He likes all these knobbly bits. So you can see what a lot of constraints I have. So since he didn't want any of the branches cut off, this is the best I can do. I've just opened the tree up much more so it doesn't look like a column, and that's it. I've checked his soil and it doesn't really need teasing or cutting of the root. So here we are. We have repositioned the tree slightly so that it leans more, and we didn't cut any root because it didn't need it, but I've repositioned the tree and added some fresh soil to the other side and filled soil around the pot. And this is how I've changed this tree without doing too much. So that is that one done. So this is our second tree. This tree is a hinoki cypress, very, very fine foliage, which is very nice. And again, this is a tree that he's had for more than 20, probably even 30 years. And with hinoki cypress that are grafted onto Leylandii stock, they have this ugly potato-like shape. And some people try and carve it, but I think if you carved it, you could kill the tree. So I won't touch that bit at all. You can see how vigorous the root stock is. All hinoki rootstock on Leylandii are extremely vigorous, and the roots are virtually popping out of the pot. I don't know whether he did the repotting, it seems so, but I have seen this tree before. Many of the trees that come to us are brought to us regularly, so I will have a look at it. It does look a bit pot-bound, so I will get one of our staff to repot it. You can see it does need a bit of repotting, but what I will do is just trim the tree. So to begin with, all hinoki cypress have this habit of shedding old needles. And don't panic, it's quite common for this tree to behave in this way. And like the pines, you have to keep cleaning the old foliage to make it look fresh. So I don't know why some people don't do the simple basic chores. So the basic chores are literally like cleaning the foliage and taking the dead branches off. So can you see there's some dead branches? Simply by taking dead twigs off, the tree will start to look much fresher. I normally would undo the wire by unwinding it, but because the foliage is so delicate, I don't want to risk that. So I'm doing something which I don't usually do, which is cutting the wire off. This is the standard way to remove old wire. But as many of you will know, I usually prefer to just unwind the wire. The wire should certainly have done its work, because it certainly seems to be quite an old tree. There is no particular style to this tree. It's just been grown in an informal fashion. Wiring is not perfect, just the odd bit of wire, no two-branch principle. I noticed that where he has put a lot of wire on, the branches have tended to die. The branches are certainly set in position, and fortunately the bark hasn't been marked too badly. haven't looked at the tree in any critical way, so I'm going to just go with the flow and see what I can do to improve it. So my mind is just working overtime to see what I can do to improve this tree. So while I'm thinking, perhaps you can also think and see if you're thinking along the lines that I'm thinking. I noticed that the apex right at the very top is extremely weak, but the rest of the foliage is quite vigorous and very green. So the tree is obviously a very tough tree. With a bit of repotting, it should improve it even more. I won't attempt to change the shape or the planting angle because the root ball, as you can see, is such a tight mass. I'm only going to remove the extremities of the roots to give the roots more chance to breathe. More than that, I won't do anything. So while I'm concentrating on removing this whole wire, I'm seeing what else I can do. It's beginning to bite on this branch and trunk. Pity about the large potato-like shape of the trunk. If it wasn't for that, the tree would be quite an interesting tree. But as they say, nothing is perfect in life. You've got to just work with what you've been given. If I had a lot of these trees, I would probably attempt at carving the trunk to see if it can be improved, but the risk of killing it is quite high, so I wouldn't do that. Now let's look at the tree critically and see which could be a better front. Although some people, when they grow their bonsai, they're not bothered about whether the tree has a front or back. They look at it from every conceivable side. Now if it was my tree, I would even consider this as a possible front. But I think if he's been using this, see, this is very congested here. If I use this as the front, this is a better front because it's wider. I may have to take some of these off because it's hiding the trunk. Certain obvious things can be taken off. This is hiding that, so that's doing nothing. I'll take that off. Again, without scalping the tree, just very gentle pruning. Let's see if it can be improved. He's obviously not been pruning the tree because you need to take the tips out. If you don't prune the tips out, it will continue to get extended and you'll lose control of the tree completely. So this is looking very pleasing. What if I brought this down a little more, because that's looking a bit sparse there. Without cutting it off, I will do that. Because if I took the entire portion off, it may be too drastic. See, you might have to keep using the bag from time to time. See, like that, it might be too sparse. So rather than do that, I will just wire those top twigs downwards to make the crown more dense. So I will just do that. This is certainly not the Nana gracilis. The very common variety of hinoki is the Chamaecyparis obtusa Nana gracilis, but this is not Nana gracilis. The foliage is too fine for that. So again, applying the two branch principle. You notice I use the gin pliers quite a lot, and when it comes to terminating the ends of the wires, the gin pliers is almost indispensable. The fingers would be hard pressed to bend it like that. So now that bent it. So the object is to fill the space, not let it shoot up, but give the apex a more defined look to make it more compact. You see, I've done that. And now that I've done that, I think that bit can come off. So I've tightened it all around. So more than that, I wouldn't really do, because that is all that is needed. That's all that is needed. This can continue to be the front. I know I can remove that, but it will leave a gap. If I take it all off, these branches or the trunks will look so skinny and thin. So I rather have a full figure here, but just have a semblance of an outline. So this almost looks like a rock, so I wouldn't be averse to keeping that. That very lumpy rock-like effect has a sculptural quality to it. And that ugly root sticking out also has an interesting character, so I wouldn't be bothered about that. So I will simply take the extremities of the roots off over there and put some fresh soil there. So the repotting is not going to be difficult. So that is what I would do, and this tree will continue to live for another 20, 30 years, you never know. And if you put it in a bigger pot, the tree will grow even more vigorous. So that's all I will do to that tree. So I don't always do completely drastic things. This is a very modest, or I would say benign, attempt at beautifying this customer's tree. As I said, you can look at it from many different perspectives. As I said, this is also a possible front. If it was my tree, I would certainly make this the front and put it in a round pot. This would look quite nice. But since this is this gentleman's tree, I will leave it like that. So I hope you've enjoyed the way I approach dealing with customers' trees that don't want too much done to them. Simply doing a little bit to improve it. So that's another exercise altogether.